Hi guys, I'm with Darren Charles, singer and guitar player of God, to talk about the sixth album. This is what a winner looks like. So thanks Darren for having us.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Okay, so first of all, the album was released 4 days ago. So how do you feel?
Um, I suppose relieved in a sense because, like for most artists, they usually finish their album months and months before it's eventually released. So you're always anticipating how what the reaction's going to be like, and you're just sort of impatient for other people to listen to the music that you've been listening to yourself for the last, Christ, probably the last 6 months. So yeah, relieved is more than anything else. But so far the reaction's been really good, so we're really pleased.
Okay, yeah. So I will ask you what are the first feedbacks from the fans and press? You're happy with them?
Yeah, definitely. Your own United Rock Nations, in fact, give one of the first reviews to come in, and that was a glowing review. So we were really appreciative of that. And
We
so
love the
far,
album, yeah.
yeah, no, and it's noted and it's appreciated as well. That any support that we get is always, like I said, appreciated. But yeah, most of the reviews that they'll be trickling in over the course of the next few weeks now. But every review we've read so far has been really positive. So there's nothing more you could hope for, really.
Okay. So you're mostly described as a prog rock band, and progressive music are often long, and your album is quite short. So
Yeah.
why?
Well,
We
I
want
think
more.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is the first time that we released an album so short. I think it
Mm,
comes in at maybe 40 minutes, something like that.
yeah.
And that wasn't originally the intention because we wrote about 16 or 17 songs, and recorded the vast majority of them in the studio. And we always planned to release a certain amount on this album, and then throughout the next 12 months or so, just release, every one of the songs that we recorded, one at a time, just to keep people, just to keep fresh, just to remind people that we still exist. Because often is the case when you release an album, you don't hear anything for another 2 years. So we thought, you know what, we'll record more than we need, and we'll just release. But when it came to putting the songs together for the album, it was Johnny from the record, Johnny from K-Scope, who said, because originally there was going to be 11 songs on this album, and he said, "Why don't you just pick 10 songs and just do 10 songs, 10 what you think is the best songs, just do that." And we were like, "Oh, but we got more songs." And he said, "Honestly, just do 10." And I suppose he sort of mirrored a philosophy of mine, is like you should always leave people wanting more. And that's not something we've done in the past. We've always, wherever we've recorded in that particular session, we've included on the album. But it was Johnny's idea just to put 10 songs on the album. We were reluctant at first, but I'm sort of glad we did it, because it doesn't mean that's the only output from us for the next, until 3 years or 2 or 3 years time, when we do another album. We've still got a pile of songs that we're going to release over the course of the year. So hopefully people won't feel too shortchanged by the fact that it's only 40 minutes.
Okay. And I read that you said that the COVID period wasn't a creative period for you. Can you explain how do you live this period, and how it influences you on the writing process, if it does?
Um, yeah, the COVID during lockdown, it was probably the least creative. It was definitely the least creative period of my entire life for some reason. Like everybody else, when everything first began being locked down, I thought, oh well, I'll use this time to just write new music. And so I tried, just calculated, cold and calculated, sat down and said, let's try and write something. And I did write a few bits and bobs, but it was crap, basically. So I just gave up in the end, because it just felt, I could come up with things and ideas, but I didn't really feel any of them. They didn't really mean anything for some reason. So I just carried on doing. So it wasn't I'm always busy. I'm always doing something. So I'd be studying. I'd just study music. I'd practice. I'd transcribe. I was getting into electronics and seeing how amps work and just nerdy things like that. My wife was doing a biology degree, so I started just listening to her give me lectures on her. So I was enjoying that as well. So, I wasn't short of, I was short of inspiration, but I wasn't short of things to do. But I just, for some reason, I just couldn't write anything, and I didn't know what the reason was until I think it was September 2021 was when we were eventually able to go out and play live. Mm-hmm. And after I think we did something like about 4 shows, and then when I came back, I was just all of a sudden I was just inspired to write. And I think like within a 7-month period, I've written like about 16 songs, which is like unheard of for me. It usually takes, as I said, every song that we write, over a course of 2 years ends up on the album. And it takes 2 years. Sometimes a song can take an entire year, but this time it's just as if I, bottled up all the creativity and then unleashed it after we played those live shows. But I was thinking the other day that I haven't necessarily improved my average over the course of 4 years. I'm still doing, 10 songs every 2 years, it seems. But yeah, I enjoyed the COVID period. I really, the lockdown and the solitude, because I enjoy solitude. And the best thing about the pandemic for me personally was not having to provide an excuse for not wanting to go out. I could just say, it's not my fault. It's the rules. We can't go out anywhere. So that was the positive. That was the upside for me.
Okay. So biology didn't inspire you, but what about the topic of the songs?
Mostly, well, actually, the topics of the song was always sort of concerned with television that I'd watched during that period. Because I think the last album that we did, Inescapable, is a little bit more introspective and more personal. But quite often, I enjoy writing sort of abstract themes, based on other people's experiences, not my own, because I'm quite boring, so I haven't really got really great experiences to talk of. So I'm always interested in, and actually, I just like listening to other people's stories, if I'm honest. And like, I think probably, people don't mind spending time with me a lot of the time because I do more listening, although they would probably say the opposite. I feel like I listen more than I talk, but I'm sure that people who know me might disagree. But I like listening to other people's experiences and other people's opinions on things. So like when I watch TV programs, it's just interesting. I like, this perfect for me. So like there was like programs like Succession, which had just finished. I discovered there was loads of stuff. And in fact, French cinema and French TV is a big thing for me, because we get some stuff like Spiral by BBC, but French cinema, and I'm not just saying it because you're on the other end of the Zoom call, but me and my wife love French cinema. We love like Nordic stuff as well, and French TV, they've always do it best. When it comes to personal character studies, the French do it best. They really do, because it's always about the story with the French. It's never about the action or, some things are, of course, but they do character studies, I think, better than anybody.
Okay.
So lots of inspiration came from TV, basically.
And what movie do you like in French? Do you have?
I've got loads of them. There's one called, I tell you what, the one called is transcribed as The Untouchables, I think is called. That was the one I watched.
Maybe
They did a remake of this. They did a remake of it in America, USA did a remake of it very recently, where Bryan Cranston was the guy in the wheelchair. And it was and there was a guy who's in another program on Netflix at the moment who played the carer. And I can't remember what his name was in this. I can never remember. It's got nothing to do with the fact it's French. I can never remember the names of anything anyway. But like that was the last one I watched. But there's tons like that I watched over the years, like Three Colors, the trilogy, I think. Just tons and tons of stuff. I don't really pay. Like I said, I got all the things I've watched over the years written down, actually. So because in case I want to return to them. So I could email you a list, but I can't remember any off the top of my head. But that was the last. Remember that The Untouchables, as it was transcribed as. I think that was one of the last. And even though that was quite a few years old, that film, if I remember, about 5 years old or such. But there's loads of them. There's one, I think there's one I watched where it was an interesting story about a short guy dating a taller woman. And I can't remember what that was called as well. I'll send you the list. I'll send you it because it sounds like I'm making it up. And that sounds like a crap storyline as well. But it was like the real actor's I think it's a famous French actor. And they shrunk him down for this, for this particular film. That was really good as well.
Okay.
That was an interesting
I don't see
story.
that.
It exists, I promise. I just don't know what it
I believe you. Okay. And except French film, what are the artists who inspired you?
What, for this album or just over the years?
All over the years. But maybe if you have a special one for the album. Yeah.
I didn't have any particular one for the album because I just, these days, in the last few years, I just listen to lots of pop music, believe it or not. And like back in the early days, about 10 years ago, I've gone through loads of different phases, really. I've gone through like big Frank Zappa phase. Then I went through a Steely Dan phase, believe it or not. Then I went through a massive Rufus Wainwright phase where I just obsessed with everything he did. System of a Down, then I went through a phase with that. Meshuggah went through that phase. So like over the years, I've just become obsessed with certain bands, and that's all I listen to. But like the last one I really became obsessed by, but that was after the album, was a band called The Smile with Tom York and Johnny Greenwood out of Radiohead. That's their sort of new project. I really love. I love Radiohead stuff. I don't listen to it a great deal, but this particular little project they're doing called The Smile, that was really inspirational. And in fact, inspired with the album, we released a bonus disc with it for anyone who pre-ordered. And there was those 3 songs as a direct result of being inspired by that band. It doesn't sound anything like them, but they sort of inspiration for me is just like if someone inspires you to go pick up the guitar or pick up or sit at the piano or something. It's not necessarily I want to try and copy their music. They just inspire me to just try and create something in the first place, because what they do is just magical. But Kendrick Lamar phase. I went through a Kendrick Lamar phase as well. I really like stuff like that. I like all different types of music, really. I'm predominantly, a rock player, and this is a rock band. But all of us have got lots of different inspirations and different influences, and they all sort of worm their way into the music some way, perhaps. I think, anyway.
Okay, and and it's true, but you often your voice is compared to Miles Kennedy and Chris Cornell. Is that are they an inspiration for you, or you're just happy with the comparison, or not?
Miles Kennedy is not an influence. I've not really listened. I've not really listened to much of Alter Bridge. I think that's the band. Chris Cornell is definitely. I don't consider I couldn't possibly compare myself to someone like Chris Cornell or even Miles Kennedy for that matter, but especially Chris Cornell, because the guy his voice is something. It's in a different league to anybody's. His range is ridiculous. He can do everything. It's a bit like it's probably Chris Cornell and Mike Patton are probably the 2 biggest influences vocally. I did listen to a lot. Soundgarden were a big influence growing up when I was in the 90s. I followed everything that Soundgarden did up until like Super Unknown. I didn't really enjoy that, but I liked loads of their early stuff. I can't, like I said, I sort of a little not embarrassed, but sort of reluctant to even acknowledge that there's a comparison between my voice and Chris Cornell, only because he's just so incredible, and there's no way on earth, that my voice is anywhere near as powerful and as soulful as his, in my opinion. Just as speaking as a fan, so
yeah.
But yeah, I can see, I don't hear it, but I got no problem. I'm not going to say who I think I sound like. It's nothing to do with me. I don't care what, everyone should have their own opinion, and I should have no influence over what that is.
Okay. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about the last song of the album, Wake Up, and its abrupt end? Like some of the song on the album, why? Well, we listened to the album, it's quite short, and at the end, it stopped like this. Why? It's surprised.
I always, do you know what? That is something that we always do, it seems to me. I don't like to drag anything out when it comes to the ending of songs. Like, it just, like, again, I think it's because I always, when I'm writing, um, I always imagine what the song's going to sound like live. It doesn't influence me in the sense that, oh, I can't add another instrument or I can't put another harmony because we couldn't perform that. I don't mean it in that way. I mean, just imagining being in the audience and listening to a song played live. And when you're live, usually a song ends abruptly,
Yeah.
or at least it does in our gigs. So I always think in that way is that, well, I imagine I'm playing live. So bang, stop, that's the end. The only thing missing is any applause, I suppose. But like, it's just the way it is. That's just the way. I just get bored, just listening to a chord, decay away or something like that. I got very little patience. So after the song is finished, it's finished. And that's that.
Okay.
So I don't apologize.
It's just that sometimes some of those songs stops abruptly, but on some of the songs of the album, it stopped, but at a moment that we think there will be something else after. It's just not because it's abrupt. It's at this moment.
I get you. I know. It's sort of unresolved sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. I like doing that as well, to be honest, though, because I don't see why, things are never resolved really in life. Nothing's ever resolved. It's always a continuation of something. So I don't see why I should go dun 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 dun. Dun. No, it's just you got dun dun dun, dun and that's it. Yeah.
Okay. And what about the cover of the album, A Monkey? A monkey.
That's your question. It was nothing to do with the cover's nothing to do with me in the sense it is something to do with me, but only because I said, yeah, I really like that. This was so I came up with the album title just as a result. I knew where I wanted I wanted the album title to have a certain amount of words. I wanted a certain rhythm to the album title. And I also wanted it to be, I don't know, just a little bit odd, I suppose, but without being surreal. So I came up with the album title, and I had to try and persuade the other band members that it was a good album title and they should like it, because they didn't at first. But I said, if you don't like it, that's the rules are. If you don't like something, you see if you can come up with something better. That's fair. So they couldn't. By their own acknowledgement, they couldn't, because it is really difficult. And that's not because they're crap. It's because it's just hard to come up with it. That's one of the hardest things, coming up with the album title and the album artwork. Because how do you get a sentence to sum up what you think an album's about? It's a pain in the ass, is what it is. But anyway, so eventually we got into something. Then I sent it to Richard Beechin. He does the artwork at Case Call. So I sent it to him and I said, "Oh, here's the album title. Do you like it?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I really like it." I said, "Well, come up with something, but I don't want a literal interpretation of that title." And that was the only direction I gave him. All the best. He said, "Well, that's it." I said, "Well, yeah, you do it. I know an artist. This isn't my forte. I'm not asking you to give me a chord progression, am I? For instance, so you do this." So he went away and he came up with a variety of different things. But eventually, I think he sent through a picture of just a spider on the cover, right? And it was horrible. I can't stand spider. It was just horrible. Really, I can't imagine. I would never buy an album with a spider on the front. I don't care what
Me
the
neither.
music is like. I know. That's what I was thinking. Like, no way. I wouldn't buy it. Why would anybody else? I don't care if it's the greatest music ever. But anyway, but I said I do like the idea of like an insect or an animal being on the front, actually. And then so he sent a couple more through, and there was this insects are just really ugly, really. Like he sent something through, I think it was like a moth, some just variety of horrible insects, and but maybe an animal. And anyway, in amongst these, he sent me about 6 ideas, and in amongst these were this startling, striking blue monkey. I thought, oh, yes, that's the one, because it grabs your attention immediately. And so I said, oh, we all like this one, and he said, good, because that's the one I was going to use, regardless of what you was going to say anyway. So it worked out really well. I suppose, it's a striking enough image to go with a sort of striking album title, hopefully. But make of it what you will.
Okay. Okay. And what about live music? You announced few gigs in Great Britain. Uh, are you excited to go back on stage? And what about France?
Yes, we are always excited. Everything revolves around playing live. It's just something. That's what it's all about, in a sense. I really like that. It's equally as important as doing the studio albums, which is it used to all be about albums when I was younger. But in the last 6, 7 years, it's just all about playing live, because I really enjoy even though sort of like I'm an unsociable person and I like solitude. For some reason, I just really like playing in live, and I like meeting people after the show. Bizarrely, I don't know why that is, because it's sort of opposite to my general character, where I just want to be, oh, leave me alone. But yeah, so we got these 4 shows. All the easiest ones to book are the UK ones, because we do it ourselves. We don't have to try and convince promoters, and say, "Oh, are you interested?" Because we can, in the UK, it's quite easy to self-hire venues and promote things yourself. But when it comes to Europe, you need a promoter, and even though it's been difficult in the past, it's even more difficult now, because it was the promoters, festival organizers, they're the ones who arguably suffered the most during. They not the most. They certainly, because there's van hire companies, equipment. There's a variety of people who suffered in the pandemic, and promoters especially as well. A lot of them disappeared because there's nowhere to work at that time. So they're more cautious, I would imagine, these days, about what kind of shows they put on. And if you're not guaranteed, this is how many people we're going to get at a show, no, they're not willing to speculate. And I can understand that, because if I was running a business, you need certainty. You don't go to work hoping you can earn enough money and praying. You need some degree of certainty. So I can understand why they might be a little bit reticent about organising any band, not just us. But that's all we can do, is just keep pushing forward, really, and sort of try and encourage as many, just encourage some exposure, trying to get more exposure abroad, and to see if any promoters will be willing to take the risk of just bringing us over. But for us, I would spend 12 months of the year, maybe 11 months. I want to see my cats, but I would spend about 11 months. I just love touring. It's just a great experience, even though you spend the majority of it just trapped in a van with people for like 6, 7 hours a day, and then having no sleep. It's just a great experience, and it doesn't seem to get any worse as you get older. It takes its toll a little bit, but
Yeah.
I love it, and if I could do more of it, I would. But it's all dependent on whether we can get promoters to bring us over, really, or become hop on an existing tour with another band. So we don't know what's out the future. We don't know what's out the future, but it certainly isn't us not having a desire to gig abroad and in Europe, the rest of Europe.
Okay. So we'll finger crossed that you
Fingers crossed.
find
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
promoters, or we will try to push it.
Appreciate it.
So thank you very much for this interview.
Yeah.
And
No worries.
hope we will see you in France, or we will have to go to Britain to see you. So
Yes. I don't mind. You carry on. You travel across here. We haven't made it easy for you, but nonetheless, you're welcome.
yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. I'll speak to you again.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.